Come to Don Temple, president of the Whiteside County Farm Bureau. Don, as you talk with your members, what's the biggest issue? What's their number one concern right now?
Well, the short-term thing is the price. The price of the commodities are low, and we're seeing the price of our steel go up. I mean, we've kind of taken the double whammy on the thing. The way it's supposed to work is our steel was supposed to be higher, and their soybeans were supposed to be higher, but it didn't work that way. We're a price taker instead of a price maker, and they say, no, we don't want them, and we see the bottom drop out. The producers are concerned. I think, as the bankers mentioned, that the bottom line is going to get tighter and tighter. I've wondered for the last couple of years when we're going to see land prices fall and rents come down. I think it's going to happen, real fast when it happens. A lot of concern. Short term, we think we're seeing a good crop, and there's nothing a farmer loves more than bringing in a big crop. But there's a time when a big crop's not a good thing.
Let's bring in our banker one more time, Mike Urish from Farmers National Bank. Mike, let's talk a little bit about that, the financial situation. How does it look going into this winter and on into next year? I mean, we're getting into, as harvest is underway now, then it's going to get into planting season for next year. They're going to be coming to you with some tough questions. Are you going to have some tough answers to give them?
That's right, Mike. We've already had a fair amount of tough conversations already. What it's going to come down to going into 2019 is filling out balance sheets and really taking a close look at cash flow projections for 2019, using some realistic prices and figuring out what the plan will be. I think the other piece is paying attention to what inventory we've got on hand after this big harvest, and as I mentioned earlier on the program, marketing this crop and having a plan in place so when or if these prices do present the opportunity to price them at a profitable level to take advantage of it. I think this tariff situation's also made us much more aware of the risk we've got in basis. As it was talked about before, right now South Dakota beans have nowhere to go. We're recognizing that here where we're seeing 70 cent to $1 basis right now on our soybeans, and typically this time of year it's closer to 30 cents. So we're seeing price erosion not only on the board but also on basis. So people are going to have to pay very close attention to their pricing mechanisms and tools. I think the other piece is paying attention to machinery purchases and repair costs and weighing where you put your capital expenses. We've certainly seen over the last couple of years where those have declined, and I think people are going to have to stick with some machinery for a few more years.
We have seen land values soften, not crash, soften. So that's been good, that we haven't had the crash. Are you surprised that they've gone down as slowly as they have, or how did you see this playing out with these kind of prices?
I think it is a little bit of a surprise to see that particularly demand has stayed pretty decent in this area, but land prices is very localized. You've got, particularly in my territory of Northwest Illinois, seed corn production, which provides the opportunity to get a premium for your price, which in hand then maintains or increases the value of crop ground. Whereas if you get into different areas where you've got maybe more marginal ground, you've seen much more deterioration in those sale prices. The other piece is the supply that's out there. You get into certain parts of Northwest Illinois and there just isn't ground that changes hands very often, and when it does, it's still bringing a premium even though prices are so poor.
Ryan with Iowa State.
82% of the land in Iowa has no debt against it. We're in no debt against it. No debt. Mm-hmm. And so we're in a lot better shape than we were 30 years ago, 40 years ago. The ones that I'm most concerned about, I would say that would be the most vulnerable as we sit here and listen to Mike, are those that are cash renting a majority of their acres, young farmers that don't have a land base that is paid for underneath them. Those to me are those that are most vulnerable.
Yeah, those are some interesting numbers. Do you have more, Mike, on that?
Back onto that, I think when you see, I don't know the exact age, but predominantly a large amount of this land is owned by people over the age of 70. And as that land transitions, in most likelihood, it's going to be sold, which then it will lead to a larger supply of land out there, which should certainly bring the price down. Interest rates will certainly play a part in that as well. As rates go up, it's going to take some time for the land market to recognize that decline. But if we see rates go up another percent and a half, that could certainly have a $500 to $1,000 effect per acre on ground. But it'll just take time for it for that equilibrium to be reached.
Ready? 60% of the land owned in Iowa is owned by somebody the age of 65 and over.
And someone that's hitting their mid-60s. Let me just say 70 doesn't seem as old as it used to. Okay, all right. Yeah,
5.
There we go.
Hey, I have a question about how much that is owned by women, that land. It's a lot of widows, right?
Give me a second and I'll tell you the number. Hang on.
Sorry about that, Mike.
No, that's a good question. We were talking about this earlier about who owns the land.
Right.
I think people would be shocked to know how much of that farmland is owned by who.
While he's looking that up, I have been pleasantly surprised to see we farm in Story County, and landlords have been willing to look at cash rent rates for this next year, which I think is helpful. I don't know if that's widespread across the state, but at least within our area, they recognize the challenges and have been willing to take that into account.
Yeah.
So the number is 47% of the land is owned by a female owner. And my comment also on piggybacking off of Julia's, in this area of the state as well, I've had several individuals that have talked about and realizing that we've got tariffs that are in place, we've got a suppressed commodity market, and what can I do to help lower the rents for my tenant that I've had a long-term relationship with? I want to keep them. I want to make sure that they stay in business through this tough time. So I've had a lot of those conversations.
But good relationships, whether it's with landowner and farmer, or farmer and lender. I mean, these issues are crucial. Don?
Yesterday I was at a meeting with the Illinois Secretary of Ag, and he made a comment that there's a group from China, looking to invest in farm ground. And I just don't feel real good about that. I really like to see it, stay in our hands, but I don't know if anybody's heard stuff like that around, or if there's a lot of foreign investment going on.
Ryan, we often hear concerns about foreign ownership of farmland, but that's still a pretty low percentage, isn't it?
In the state of Iowa, we have laws that prohibit that. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of heads shaking around the room that probably know a little bit more about that than I do, but we have laws set up that prohibit that.
Yeah.
I think it's a rule. There's no foreign investment, the way I understand it. And then there's a rule that if it's an investor group, it has to be less than 25 investors in that group in the state of Iowa. I don't know what Illinois is, or anything along those lines. But I think that the key to that, to all those statistics you talk about, those are nothing new that we haven't heard before. But the thing that worries me the most is that I've got a nephew that's in college, wants to farm, and he'll probably have the opportunity, given my brother and myself, we can hopefully work him into the operation. But with the age of those people and the age of the farmers that are actually engaged in farming going up, and with the economy the way it is now, the first ones we're going to lose is going to be the young farmer, and we're losing them already. And so we brought a lot of young farmers in this last good upturn, but I'm afraid we're going to lose a generation of farmers here if this continues for a long time.
We've seen that before. Coming out of the 80s, we saw that. And then, as you said, during that recent upturn we had, all of a sudden they were coming back. We were just getting them back, and then this hits. Before we're out of time, Jen Lee, I want to talk about an issue facing the beef industry: fake meat, imitation meat, lab meat, whatever you want to call it. How seriously does the real beef industry take this?
Yeah, this is obviously a big concern for our producers. We have a couple of different interests. Number one, in protecting consumers' confidence in the products that we raise. We want to make sure that when people go to the grocery store, they feel comfortable buying the meat that's there for them to purchase and take home and feed their families. But we also want to make sure that they know what exactly that they're getting and how it was produced, whether it was raised on an Iowa farm or grown in a petri dish in a laboratory somewhere. And our second priority, obviously, is to protect the beef industry and the long-standing tradition and legacy that we have of producing a safe, wholesome product. So we want to make sure that any labeling rules protect both of those things and that people know what they're purchasing, but that they also can't claim to be things like clean meat that would imply that our products aren't safe or clean. So working on this in a couple of different ways on the federal level, supporting USDA jurisdiction over this topic rather than FDA. We've seen the dairy industry ask FDA to enforce labeling rules for several decades to no avail. So we want to be able, we want to make sure that this comes under USDA's jurisdiction. They do oversee lots of processing, obviously, of meat products. So we think that it fits into what they do, and they're the best equipped to handle this moving forward. And then on the state level, exploring some possibility of legislation to protect terms like meat and beef so that consumers know what they're getting and producers can continue to market their products.
Who'd have ever thought we'd be having this discussion? I mean, what is meat? Mm-hmm. How do you label meat? But we're seeing that more and more.
Same with milk. There's muscle milk.
That really started all this with all of that. So we're into that. It's the whole FDA, USDA jurisdiction issue there too as well. Okay, we need to wrap things up here. I want Dave, biodiesel industry, still time this year. Hopefully, maybe we get this member of Congress to get that tax incentive permanent for biodiesel.
I'd like to have it on time. Right?
On time. That would be nice. The year it's actually in place.
Right.
Current year.
Yeah, and I want to compliment Congressman Lovesack. He's been a great champion for us. We've met a number of times on the same issue, and the permanence of that tax credit is definitely key. But even if we could bring that in retroactively, that would be a great help to our producers, especially in the state of Iowa.
And Julie, Iowa Department of Ag, it sounds like you've got a lot of great programs going, a good relationship with your state legislature. What are your priorities moving forward here?
Yeah, obviously we're working on the what we do on a daily basis within the department, but we are number one focused on water quality. Our team is focused on that very heavily, making sure we have markets for our products. And then the one thing we haven't talked about is workforce. So making sure that we've got folks to fill these great jobs. When we meet with folks and they say, I can't grow my business because I don't have the right people or the right talent, that's a problem. So that's another focus within the department. We do, again, appreciate the legislature and the support that they've given us.
We could do a whole program on immigration. Are we any closer to getting a vote on, I don't know how you feel about the Goodlatte bill, but something that would improve the ag guest worker program in this country?
Well, the Goodlatte bill went down on a bipartisan basis. That's the thing. It's got to be a part of any comprehensive immigration reform we have. And I really do believe we have to do this in a comprehensive way. There are so many aspects to immigration. The Senate passed a comprehensive immigration bill way back in 2013, but it just wasn't allowed to come to a vote on the floor of the House. And it was bipartisan. It had 67 or 68 votes back then. But there are just so many aspects. It's going to be really hard to do one thing at a time. I really think we're going to have it all at one time.
Well, let me ask you that, because I hear that, but we know that the ag guest worker program is not working the way it should now.
Right.
We're losing workers. We're having trouble harvesting crops, getting people to work in processing plants, things like that. Why can't – it seems like in an effort to get everything fixed, we're keeping something from getting fixed that could get fixed.
Look, I mean, folks don't necessarily want to hear what I'm going to have to say, but we've got to stop demagoguing the issue. That's the bottom line. Nothing's going to get done in the U.S. Congress if politicians on both sides of the issue demagogue this thing. And that's one of the basic problems that we have here, quite honestly. So, again, it comes back to sort of how we talk about the issue, how we talk about the people involved, that sort of thing. And, we've got to get it done. There's no question about that. We know in Iowa, we have a worker shortage here in Iowa. And when we start talking about that, then some other folks say, well, we can't do that because of whatever reason, on and on and on. But the demographics in Iowa are such. We know we're an aging population. It's going to be really hard for us to get folks from surrounding states to come into Iowa to do the jobs that have to be done. So we've got and this can be bipartisan. I mean, we've got the Chamber of Commerce speaking out in favor of comprehensive immigration reform. Then we have those who are concerned about the DACA kids and the Dreamers who are saying the same things in many ways. That's why I think we got to come together on this in a bipartisan way.
It just seems to me, getting back to what we said earlier, in both parties, the extremes of both parties are keeping everything from getting done in between.
That's exactly right. That's right.
Liz Hobart, Growmark FS, thank you for your sponsorship. Appreciate it.
We greatly appreciate it. It's been great dialogue today, and I think as we talk about a lot of these issues that are facing us today, it's taking that acre out our back door there to a global marketplace, and there's a lot of consequences. And I think we have a lot of good things going on, especially here in the Midwest and in Iowa, and we greatly appreciate the collaborations and partnerships with all of you around here. And I think we just need to continue to move forward from a voluntary perspective on science-based perspective, and just keep in mind the economic viability of agriculture, because that's the strength of this country and that's the strength of Iowa, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity.
I really think we have to make sure agriculture doesn't get dragged down the way other areas have gone in this country. Agriculture should be the leader in showing here's how you work together and get things done, and let the rest of the country follow our example instead of us following them down the path of stalemate and things not getting done. I want to thank KCLN for committing programming time, airtime to allow this type of discussion, the type of discussion I think that needs to be held more and more across our country, and appreciate stations like KCLN that does this. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Great discussion today. I'm Mike Adams. Thank you for joining us on our 2018 Ag Roundtable, presented by Growmark FS and by Clinton County Farm Bureau, Bunge North America, Farm Bureau Insurance and Financial Services, the Iowa Biodiesel Board, Clinton Sawmill Museum, Wild Rose Casino and Resort, and Homer's Deli. I'm Mike Adams. Have a safe harvest, everyone. Thanks for joining us.